Standing beside two tiny white coffins in the hushed chapel of Anderson Funeral Home, I felt my world crumbling around me. My 6-month-old twin boys, Jake and Noah, lay peaceful and still, their perfect little faces serene, as if they were simply napping. The scent of white lilies filled the air, mingling with the whispered conversations of relatives who had gathered to say goodbye. My mother-in-law, Patricia, approached with tears streaming down her cheeks, her black dress rustling softly against the marble floor. She placed a cold hand on my shoulder and delivered words that shattered what remained of my heart. God took them because He knew what kind of mother they had. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd of family members. My husband Marcus stood frozen near the back wall, his eyes downcast, saying nothing to defend me. Just as I felt utterly alone and broken, my 4-year-old daughter Emma tugged Pastor Brian's black robe and innocently asked, "Pastor Brian, should I tell everyone what Grandma put in the baby bottles?" The entire room fell deadly silent. 3 years earlier, I had been Dorothy Sullivan, a 25-year-old pediatric nurse working at Portland General Hospital, when I met Marcus Thompson at a bustling coffee shop on Northwest 23rd Avenue. He was sitting alone at a corner table reading a thick medical journal while sipping an espresso. His gentle brown eyes and warm smile drew me in immediately. We struck up a conversation about his work as a physical therapist, and I found myself captivated by his passion for helping patients recover from traumatic injuries. Our romance blossomed quickly through long walks along the Willamette River and weekend trips to the Oregon coast. Marcus proposed after 8 months of dating, presenting me with his grandmother's vintage diamond ring during a sunset picnic at Mount Hood. His mother, Patricia, seemed thrilled about our engagement, welcoming me into the family with elaborate dinner parties and shopping trips for wedding preparations. She appeared to be everything I had hoped for in a mother-in-law, warm, caring, and eager to include me in family traditions. Patricia was a retired elementary school teacher who had devoted her life to nurturing children, and she spoke lovingly about the grandchildren she hoped to spoil someday. Our wedding was a beautiful celebration at the historic Pittock Mansion, with Patricia organizing every detail from the ivory rose bouquets to the 3-tier vanilla cake. She insisted on giving a touching speech about how I was the daughter she never had and how blessed she felt to watch Marcus find true love. During our honeymoon in Hawaii, Patricia called daily to check on us, which Marcus assured me was just her way of showing affection. The first year of marriage was blissful. Marcus and I bought a charming craftsman-style house in the Hawthorne district, complete with a white picket fence and a sprawling backyard perfect for future children. I continued working at the hospital while Marcus built his private practice. Patricia visited frequently, bringing homemade meals and offering to help with household projects. She seemed genuinely interested in my nursing career, asking detailed questions about my patients and praising my dedication to healing sick children. When I became pregnant with twins after 2 years of marriage, Patricia was overjoyed. She immediately began knitting tiny sweaters and planning the nursery design. However, I started noticing subtle changes in her behavior. She would make offhand comments about modern mothers who prioritize careers over children. During my baby shower, she mentioned how exhausted I looked and suggested I consider taking extended leave from work. When I expressed my intention to return to nursing after maternity leave, her smile would tighten almost imperceptibly. The twins arrived on a snowy February morning after 18 hours of labor. Jake entered the world first, weighing 5 pounds and 8 ounces, but struggled with breathing difficulties that required him to spend 2 weeks in the neonatal intensive care unit. Noah followed 20 minutes later, perfectly healthy at 6 pounds even. Holding my sons for the first time filled me with indescribable joy and fierce protectiveness. Patricia was present for their birth, tears of happiness streaming down her face as she cradled each grandson for the first time. During those first challenging months, I was overwhelmed by the demands of caring for premature twins while trying to maintain my career. Jake required special feeding schedules and breathing treatments while Noah developed colic that kept him crying for hours each night. I was running on 3 hours of sleep, surviving on coffee and determination. Patricia offered to help with nighttime feedings, staying overnight several times per week to give Marcus and me much-needed rest. Initially, I was grateful for her assistance. She seemed to have a magical touch with the babies, soothing them when I could not. However, I began noticing that the twins were unusually sleepy after her visits. When I mentioned this to our pediatrician, Dr. Jennifer Walsh, she explained that some babies naturally have varied sleep patterns and suggested I not worry unless other symptoms appeared. Patricia gradually took over more of the baby care, arriving early in the morning and staying late into the evening. She criticized my feeding techniques, suggested I was overstimulating the babies with too much interaction, and insisted that strict schedules were essential for proper development. Her comments became more pointed, perhaps. I was not cut out for caring for 2 babies simultaneously. Maybe I should consider hiring full-time help, or possibly I was suffering from postpartum depression that was affecting my judgment. 3 nights before the tragedy that would destroy my world, I discovered Patricia in the nursery at 2 o'clock in the morning. She was hunched over the changing table, carefully mixing something into 2 bottles of formula. The soft glow from the nightlight cast eerie shadows across her concentrated face as she used a small mortar and pestle to crush white tablets. When she noticed me standing in the doorway, she startled and quickly tried to conceal her activities. "Oh, Dorothy, dear, you frightened me," she whispered, forcing a smile. "I was just preparing their bottles for the night feeding. I added some natural herbal supplements to help them sleep better. Poor little Jake has been so restless lately, and I thought some chamomile and valerian root might soothe their systems." Something about her explanation felt wrong, but my exhausted mind could not pinpoint exactly what troubled me. The twins had indeed been fussy recently, and Patricia always seemed to know best when it came to child care. I accepted her reasoning and returned to bed, though unease gnawed at my stomach throughout the restless night. 2 mornings later, on a crisp Thursday in September, I entered the nursery to wake the boys for their morning feeding. The autumn sunlight streamed through the yellow gingham curtains, illuminating 2 cribs that were far too quiet. Jake lay motionless in his blue pajamas, his tiny chest still. Noah appeared to be sleeping peacefully, but when I reached down to touch his cheek, his skin was cold and lifeless. My screams shattered the morning silence as I frantically attempted to wake my babies, shaking them gently and then desperately calling their names. Marcus rushed into the room and immediately began CPR while I called 911 with trembling fingers. The paramedics arrived within 8 minutes, but their efforts were futile. Both babies had been gone for hours. At the hospital, the emergency room doctor gently explained that preliminary examinations suggested sudden infant death syndrome, though it was extremely rare for twins to be affected simultaneously. The medical examiner would conduct autopsies to determine the exact cause of death. In the devastating weeks that followed, Patricia appeared to be the model of supportive grandmother. She handled funeral arrangements, organized meal trains from church members, and stayed close to provide comfort during our darkest hours. However, family members began whispering about my fitness as a mother. Patricia's sister Carol mentioned that I had seemed overwhelmed and possibly neglectful. Marcus's cousin Linda suggested that working mothers often failed to properly bond with their children. Even my own sister Sarah wondered aloud whether I had been too tired to notice signs of illness in the babies. The isolation was crushing. Friends from work offered condolences but seemed uncomfortable around me, unsure of what to say or do. Neighbors avoided eye contact when I walked to the mailbox. The only person who remained consistently supportive was my 4-year-old daughter Emma, who had been staying with my parents since the tragedy, but insisted on returning home to comfort me with crayon drawings of angels and innocent questions about when Jake and Noah would come back from heaven. Patricia's presence became suffocating rather than comforting. She monitored my every move, criticized my grieving process, and suggested that I needed professional help to deal with my guilt and denial. She insisted on handling all communication with the medical examiner's office and funeral home, claiming she wanted to spare me additional trauma. When I requested copies of the autopsy reports, she said they were too technical for me to understand, and that dwelling on medical details would only prolong my suffering. Pastor Brian, a gentleman in his 60s, with kind blue eyes and silver hair, immediately knelt to Emma's eye level when she tugged his ceremonial robe. The funeral chapel, which had been filled with hushed conversations and rustling tissues, became absolutely silent except for the soft humming of the heating system. Every eye turned toward my little girl, who stood confidently in her black velvet dress with white patent leather shoes that I had polished that morning. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" Pastor Brian asked in his soothing voice that had comforted countless grieving families over the years. "Can you tell me what you saw Grandma Patricia do?" Emma looked around the room with the earnest expression that only young children possess when they believe they are being helpful adults. Her blonde curls bounced as she nodded enthusiastically. "I was hiding behind the big chair in the baby room because I wanted to watch Grandma feed Jake and Noah. She had little white pills that she crushed up with a big silver spoon, just like when Mommy gives me medicine when I have a fever." My heart stopped beating for several seconds as Emma's innocent words hung in the air. Patricia's face drained of all color, transforming from pale pink to an ashen gray that matched the marble walls of the funeral home. Her hands began trembling visibly as she clutched her black leather purse against her chest. "Emma, honey, you must be confused." Patricia stammered, her voice rising an octave higher than normal. "Grandma only gave the babies their regular formula. Sometimes grief makes little children remember things that did not really happen." But Emma shook her head firmly, her blue eyes sparkling with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what she had witnessed. "No, Grandma Patricia. You told me it was special vitamins to make babies sleep like angels. You said angels sleep forever, and that is why Jake and Noah were so quiet in the morning. And you took pictures with your phone when they would not wake up for breakfast." The collective gasp that echoed through the chapel sounded like air being sucked from the room. Several relatives stepped backward instinctively, as if Emma's words carried a physical force. My sister Sarah covered her mouth with both hands, her eyes wide with horror. Marcus's brother David quietly moved toward the exit, his cell phone already in his hand. Marcus, who had remained silent throughout the entire funeral service, finally found his voice. "Emma, sweetheart, are you absolutely sure about what you saw? This is very important." "Yes, Daddy Marcus," Emma replied solemnly, using the special name she had given him when I married into the family. "Grandma had a little white bottle with no writing on it that she hid in her big purse. She said it would help Jake and Noah be good babies who never cried or kept Mommy awake at night. She said Mommy was too tired to take care of babies properly." The room began spinning around me as the horrific implications of Emma's testimony became clear. My knees buckled, and I had to grab onto the edge of Jake's tiny coffin to prevent myself from collapsing. The smooth wood felt cold beneath my fingers, and I could smell the sweet fragrance of the white roses that adorned the casket spray. "This is ridiculous," Patricia declared, her voice now shrill with panic. "You cannot seriously believe the confused ramblings of a traumatized child. Emma has been through a terrible ordeal, and she is obviously mixing up memories or perhaps repeating something she saw on television. I devoted my entire life to caring for children. I would never harm my own grandsons." But the damage was already done. The relatives who had been nodding in agreement with her earlier accusations against me were now staring at Patricia with suspicion and growing alarm. Marcus's Aunt Beverly whispered something to her husband Robert, who immediately pulled out his phone and began typing rapidly. Pastor Brian stood slowly, his weathered face grave with concern. "I think we need to take a moment to process what Emma has shared with us. Perhaps we should contact the appropriate authorities to investigate these serious allegations." "Wait," Emma interrupted, tugging on Pastor Brian's robe again. "Grandma also said something about other sleeping babies. She showed me pictures on her phone of other babies who looked just like Jake and Noah when they would not wake up. She said she was helping all the tired mommies." The horror of that revelation sent ice through my veins. Patricia had not only murdered my babies, but she had apparently done this before to other families. How many other mothers had suffered the unbearable loss that I was experiencing? How many other children had died at the hands of this woman who presented herself as a loving grandmother? Marcus stepped forward, his face white with shock and emerging rage. "Mom, if there is even a grain of truth to what Emma is saying, you need to tell us right now. Show us your phone." "I will not be subjected to this humiliation based on the fantasies of a disturbed child." Patricia snapped, backing toward the entrance of the chapel. "Dorothy has obviously coached Emma to say these terrible things to deflect attention from her own negligence. Everyone knows she was not capable of properly caring for twins while maintaining her demanding career. But her denials rang hollow in the face of Emma's detailed and consistent account." Mr. Anderson, the funeral director, discreetly moved to the front entrance and turned the lock, preventing anyone from leaving until this situation could be properly addressed. David returned from making his phone call, his expression grim. "I just spoke with Detective Rodriguez from the Portland Police Department. She is on her way here now and has instructed everyone to remain in the building until she arrives. Patricia, she specifically requested that you surrender your cell phone immediately." "I do not have to listen to this insanity," Patricia declared, but her voice lacked conviction. Beads of perspiration appeared on her forehead, despite the cool temperature in the chapel. "You are all being manipulated by a woman who killed her own children and is now trying to blame me for her crimes." Emma looked confused by the adult tension surrounding her innocent revelation. "Mommy, why is everyone upset? I thought I was supposed to tell the truth about what I saw. Did I do something wrong?" I knelt beside my daughter and pulled her into a fierce embrace, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. "No, baby, you did exactly the right thing. You are the bravest little girl in the world, and Mommy is so proud of you for telling Pastor Brian what you saw." Detective Susan Rodriguez arrived at the funeral home within 25 minutes of David's call, accompanied by Officer Michael Chen and a crime scene photographer named Janet Williams. Detective Rodriguez was a woman in her early 40s, with sharp brown eyes and prematurely gray hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She wore a navy blue pantsuit and carried herself with the confident authority of someone who had investigated countless difficult cases throughout her 15-year career. "I need everyone to remain calm while we sort through this situation," Detective Rodriguez announced as she surveyed the room full of shocked mourners. "Mrs. Thompson, I am going to need you to voluntarily surrender your cellular device so we can examine any evidence that might support or contradict the allegations that have been made." Patricia clutched her purse even tighter against her body, her knuckles white with tension. This is a violation of my constitutional rights. I refuse to submit to this harassment on the day we are supposed to be laying my grandsons to rest. Ma'am, you have the right to refuse, but that will require me to obtain a search warrant, which will take several hours and likely result in this investigation becoming much more public and complicated. Detective Rodriguez replied calmly. Your cooperation would be appreciated and would help us resolve this matter quickly. Marcus stepped between his mother and the detective, his face a mixture of anguish and determination. Mom, if you have nothing to hide, just give them the phone. Let us put this nightmare to rest so we can grieve our sons in peace. You are taking the word of a confused child over your own mother, Patricia said, but her voice wavered with uncertainty. After everything I have done for this family, this is how you repay me. Mr. Anderson cleared his throat respectfully. Perhaps we could use my office for privacy while this matter is resolved. I have spent 40 years in funeral service, and I believe it would be appropriate to handle this delicate situation away from the chapel where the children are resting. Detective Rodriguez nodded appreciatively. That would be helpful, thank you. Mrs. Thompson, please accompany me to the office. Everyone else will need to remain here until we complete our preliminary investigation. As Patricia reluctantly followed the detective toward the back of the funeral home, she turned to glare at me with pure hatred in her eyes. You will regret this, Dorothy. When the truth comes out about what kind of mother you really are, you will wish you had never started this witch hunt. The 23 minutes that passed while Patricia was being questioned felt like hours. The remaining mourners sat in uncomfortable silence, unsure of how to process the shocking turn of events. Emma curled up in my lap, seemingly unaware of the magnitude of what her testimony had set in motion. Marcus paced nervously near the windows, running his hands through his dark hair and occasionally muttering under his breath. When the office door finally opened, Patricia emerged looking haggard and defeated. Detective Rodriguez carried a clear plastic evidence bag containing a white iPhone with a rose gold case. Patricia's hands were now secured behind her back with metal handcuffs that gleamed under the fluorescent lighting. Based on preliminary examination of the device, we have discovered evidence that supports the allegations made by the witness, Detective Rodriguez announced formally. Patricia Thompson, you are under arrest for suspicion of murder in the first degree. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. As the Miranda rights continued, Patricia's composure finally cracked completely. You do not understand. She sobbed, tears streaming down her cheeks. I was helping them. They were suffering, and I was setting them free. Dorothy was a terrible mother who cared more about her career than her babies. I saved Jake and Noah from a lifetime of neglect and pain. The admission sent shockwaves through the room. Several relatives gasped in horror, while others began quietly weeping. Marcus staggered backward as if he had been physically struck, his face contorting with disbelief and rage. How could you do this? He whispered, his voice breaking. They were innocent babies. They were my sons. They were better off in heaven, Patricia replied with disturbing conviction. God understands my mission even if you do not. I have been called to rescue children from mothers who cannot properly care for them. Detective Rodriguez gestured for Officer Chen to escort Patricia toward the exit. We will need to conduct extensive interviews with all witnesses and examine the evidence thoroughly. This investigation is far from over. As Patricia was led away, she turned back one final time to address the room. I regret nothing. Those babies are angels now, free from the suffering they would have endured with an inadequate mother. Someday you will understand that I acted out of love. The chilling words echoed in the chapel long after she disappeared through the doorway. Emma looked up at me with concerned eyes. "Mommy, why was Grandma Patricia wearing those silver bracelets? Was she in trouble for hurting Jake and Noah?" I struggled to find age-appropriate words to explain the incomprehensible evil that had destroyed our family. "Yes, sweetheart. The police officers needed to take Grandma away because she did something very bad to your little brothers. But you were very brave to tell the truth, and now the police can make sure she cannot hurt any other babies." Marcus slumped into a nearby chair, his head in his hands. "Oh God, Dorothy! What if there are others? What if she has done this before?" Detective Rodriguez overheard his comment and turned back toward us. "That is exactly what we intend to find out. Mrs. Thompson's phone contains communications with several individuals that suggest this may be part of a larger conspiracy. We will be conducting a comprehensive investigation to determine the full scope of these crimes. Over the following 72 hours, the investigation expanded far beyond anything Detective Rodriguez had initially anticipated. Patricia's iPhone revealed a disturbing network of communications that spanned 3 states and involved 5 other women who shared her twisted ideology about rescuing children from allegedly unfit mothers. The lead contact in Patricia's phone was listed as Dr. Theodore Franklin, but further investigation revealed this was actually Theodore Walsh, a 63-year-old pharmacist who had lost his license in Nevada 2 years earlier for illegally dispensing controlled substances. Theodore had been supplying the network with custom-mixed compounds designed to cause death that would appear natural to medical examiners who were not specifically looking for foul play. The chat group which Patricia's phone showed was called Guardian Angels, contained over 2,000 messages dating back 18 months. Each woman had adopted a religious code name. Patricia was Angel of Mercy, while the others called themselves Divine Grace, Heavenly Justice, Sacred Mission, Blessed Intervention, and Righteous Purpose. Their conversations revealed a systematic approach to identifying target families through new mother support groups, child care centers, and online parenting forums. Detective Rodriguez coordinated with law enforcement agencies in Phoenix, Denver, Sacramento, and 2 smaller cities to simultaneously execute search warrants on the homes of all network members. The raids uncovered evidence linking the group to at least 14 suspicious infant deaths over the past 3 years, with Patricia being directly responsible for 7 of those murders. The investigation revealed that Patricia had been infiltrating new mother support groups throughout the Portland metropolitan area, presenting herself as an experienced grandmother who wanted to help overwhelmed parents. She would identify mothers who appeared stressed, isolated, or struggling with the demands of caring for young children. Her typical approach involved offering to provide overnight child care assistance, during which she would administer fatal doses of the sleeping medication that Theodore had specially formulated for their purposes. Marcus was devastated to learn that his own childhood had been marked by Patricia's psychological manipulation and abuse. Medical records from his pediatrician revealed a pattern of mysterious illnesses and unexplained symptoms that had required frequent hospitalizations when he was between the ages of 4 and 8. Patricia had been slowly poisoning him with various substances as punishment for normal childhood behaviors that she deemed unacceptable. She would give me special medicine whenever I was too loud or energetic. Marcus confessed to Detective Rodriguez during one of his interviews. "I always felt sick and tired after taking it, but she said it was necessary to help me become a good boy. I thought all mothers gave their children medicine to control their behavior." The most chilling discovery was Patricia's personal journal found hidden in a false bottom of her bedroom closet. The leather-bound book contained detailed entries documenting her missions over the past 4 decades, beginning with the death of her own infant son in 1983. That baby's death had been ruled sudden infant death syndrome, but Patricia's journal revealed that she had suffocated him during what she described as a moment of divine clarity about his future suffering. Her journal entries showed a gradual evolution from maternal grief to messianic delusion. She genuinely believed that she was performing acts of mercy by killing children who would otherwise grow up in less than perfect circumstances. Her criteria for targeting families were disturbingly broad: working mothers, single parents, families with financial stress, parents with mental health challenges, or anyone she deemed insufficiently devoted to traditional child-rearing practices. The media attention surrounding the case was intense and overwhelming. News vans lined our street 24 hours a day, and reporters constantly attempted to interview neighbors, family members, and anyone connected to the case. The story was dubbed the Angel of Death Network by cable news programs, and Patricia's photograph appeared on magazine covers, alongside headlines about the dangers of trusting caregivers. Emma became a reluctant hero in the public narrative, though Detective Rodriguez and Child Protective Services worked carefully to shield her from media exposure. Child psychologist Dr. Amanda Foster was assigned to help Emma process the trauma of discovering that someone she trusted had committed such horrible crimes. Dr. Foster explained that Emma's young age had actually protected her from understanding the full implications of what she witnessed, allowing her to report the events with clarity unclouded by adult assumptions about human nature. Theodore Walsh's cooperation with investigators proved crucial in understanding the full scope of the network's activities. His detailed records revealed that he had supplied the group with over 50 doses of the customized sleeping medication over an 18-month period. The compound was specifically designed to mimic the effects of sudden infant death syndrome, combining respiratory depressants with substances that would metabolize quickly and leave minimal traces in standard toxicology screenings. The other network members were arrested in coordinated raids that yielded substantial evidence of their involvement in the conspiracy. Sarah Melbourne, the Divine Grace member from Phoenix, had been responsible for 3 infant deaths in her area. Jennifer Hayes, operating as Heavenly Justice in Denver, was connected to 2 suspicious deaths. The Sacramento member Linda Patterson, Sacred Mission, had killed 1 baby and was in the process of targeting a second family when she was arrested. Each woman shared similar psychological profiles: middle-aged, socially isolated individuals who had experienced significant losses or disappointments in their own lives. They had found purpose and community through their shared delusion that they were protecting children from inadequate parents. The group provided mutual support and validation for their crimes, reinforcing each member's belief that they were performing acts of divine service. Detective Rodriguez discovered that Patricia had been planning to target Emma next, viewing her as another child who needed to be rescued from my allegedly inadequate parenting. Hidden in Patricia's bedroom was a detailed surveillance log documenting Emma's daily routines, favorite foods, and sleeping habits. The planning phase typically lasted several months, during which Patricia would gain the family's trust and identify the optimal timing and method for her attack. The revelation that Emma had been Patricia's next intended victim sent me into a state of protective rage, unlike anything I had ever experienced. The thought that this monster had been plotting to murder my surviving child while pretending to comfort our family during our grief was almost too horrible to comprehend. 6 months after Patricia's arrest, the legal proceedings began in earnest. Multnomah County District Attorney Maria Santos assembled a prosecution team that included 3 experienced attorneys and 2 victim advocates to handle what had become one of the most high-profile murder cases in Oregon's recent history. Patricia's defense team was led by Jonathan Pierce, a prominent criminal attorney from Los Angeles who had made his reputation defending controversial clients in media-intensive cases. Pierce accepted Patricia's case pro bono, claiming he was motivated by concerns about the constitutional rights of elderly defendants and the dangers of prosecuting people based on circumstantial evidence and the testimony of young children. Pierce's defense strategy was as cunning as it was morally reprehensible. Rather than deny that the babies had been murdered, he instead argued that Dorothy was the real killer who had cleverly framed Patricia to avoid responsibility for her own crimes. He painted a picture of me as an unstable woman suffering from severe postpartum depression who had killed her own children in a moment of psychotic breakdown, then systematically planted evidence on Patricia's phone and coached Emma to provide false testimony. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Pierce declared during his opening statement, "my client Patricia Thompson is a 67-year-old retired elementary school teacher whose only crime was loving her grandchildren too much. The real killer sits in this courtroom today, hiding behind a mask of grief while she destroys an innocent woman's life to cover up her own heinous acts." Pierce attacked every aspect of my character and mental state. He highlighted my exhaustion in the weeks before the babies' deaths, my use of prescription medication for anxiety following their births, and my decision to return to work while they were still very young. He brought in expert witnesses who testified about the effects of sleep deprivation on new mothers and the increased risk of infanticide among women with untreated postpartum depression. The defense's most devastating moment came when Pierce cross-examined me about my discovery of Patricia mixing substances into the baby bottles. He suggested that I had fabricated this memory to create a plausible alternative suspect, pointing out that I had waited 3 days to report this supposed incident to any authorities. "Is it not true, Mrs. Thompson, that you never actually saw my client putting anything harmful into those bottles?" Pierce demanded during his aggressive questioning. "Is it not possible that your exhausted mind misinterpreted an innocent act of preparing formula as something sinister?" "No," I replied firmly, though my voice shook with emotion. "I know what I saw. She was crushing pills and mixing them into my baby's bottles." "But you admit you were taking prescription anti-anxiety medication at the time, correct medication that can cause confusion, memory problems, and hallucinations in some patients." District Attorney Santos objected strenuously to Pierce's line of questioning, but the damage had been done. Several jurors looked at me with obvious skepticism, and I could see doubt creeping into their expressions. The prosecution's case was built around the overwhelming physical evidence found on Patricia's phone and in her home. Theodore Walsh testified about his role in supplying the network with deadly compounds, providing detailed information about the specific substances he had created for Patricia's use. His testimony was corroborated by chemical analysis of residue found in Patricia's kitchen and by financial records showing payments from Patricia to Theodore over the course of 18 months. Emma's videotape testimony was played for the jury in a closed session with child psychologist Dr. Foster present to explain the reliability of children's eyewitness accounts. Dr. Foster testified that Emma's detailed and consistent description of Patricia's actions showed no signs of coaching or fabrication. Children of Emma's age are actually more reliable witnesses than adults in many circumstances, Dr. Foster explained to the jury. They have not yet learned to filter their observations through adult assumptions about what should or should not be possible. Emma reported exactly what she saw without understanding the implications of those actions. Marcus's testimony proved to be one of the most powerful moments in the trial. Despite the defense's attempts to portray him as being manipulated by me, his genuine anguish and his detailed account of his own childhood experiences with Patricia's abuse left several jurors visibly moved. "My mother destroyed my family," Marcus said, tears streaming down his face as he addressed the jury. "She murdered my children, and she spent my entire childhood slowly poisoning me as punishment for normal behavior. I trusted her with the most precious things in my life, and she used that trust to commit the most evil acts imaginable." The prosecution also presented testimony from Dr. Jennifer Walsh, the pediatrician who had treated Jake and Noah throughout their brief lives. Dr. Walsh testified that both babies had been developing normally and showed no signs of any medical conditions that would have predisposed them to sudden death. Pierce attempted to discredit the medical evidence by bringing in his own expert witness, Dr. Richard Mansfield, a forensic pathologist who suggested that the twins could have died from a rare genetic condition that would not have been detected in standard autopsy procedures. However, Dr. Mansfield's testimony was undermined when it was revealed that he had been paid $50,000 for his consultation and had never actually examined the baby's remains. The trial's most dramatic moment came when Patricia herself took the witness stand. Against the advice of her defense team, she insisted on testifying in her own defense. What was intended to be a humanizing portrayal of a grieving grandmother quickly devolved into a disturbing display of her delusional thinking. "I loved those babies more than their own mother did," Patricia declared from the witness stand. "Dorothy was too selfish and career-focused to provide the kind of nurturing environment that children deserve. I was protecting Jake and Noah from a lifetime of emotional neglect." When District Attorney Santos cross-examined Patricia about her journal entries and her communications with the other network members, Patricia showed no remorse for her actions. "Every child deserves a perfect mother," she stated with chilling conviction. "When I see a baby being raised by someone who cannot provide adequate care, I feel compelled to intervene. It is a calling from God, and I have no regrets about following that calling." Her testimony effectively destroyed any possibility of a successful defense. Even Pierce looked visibly uncomfortable as his client continued to elaborate on her twisted justifications for murder. The jury deliberated for 3 agonizing days, while I maintained a constant vigil outside the courthouse, alongside family members and supporters from the other victim families. Local news crews provided around-the-clock coverage of the proceedings, and the public had become deeply invested in the outcome of the trial. On the evening of the second day of deliberations jail, guards discovered Patricia unconscious in her cell, surrounded by empty packets of medication that she had somehow hoarded over the course of several weeks. The guards immediately called paramedics, and Patricia was rushed to Oregon Health and Science University Hospital in critical condition. During Patricia's 3-day hospitalization, court-appointed psychiatrist Dr. Helen Morrison conducted a comprehensive psychological evaluation. Dr. Morrison's assessment revealed that Patricia suffered from a rare form of delusional disorder combined with narcissistic personality traits that had gone undiagnosed for decades. When Patricia recovered sufficiently to be returned to jail, she requested a meeting with me. Against the advice of both my attorney and Detective Rodriguez, I agreed to the meeting, which took place in a monitored conference room at the hospital. Patricia appeared frail and defeated, a dramatic contrast to the confident woman who had terrorized our family for months. Her gray hair hung limply around her shoulders, and her once sharp eyes looked vacant and unfocused. "Dorothy," she began in a voice barely above a whisper, "I need you to understand something that I have never told anyone, not even my own son." I sat silently across from her, my hands clenched tightly in my lap, fighting the urge to flee from this final confrontation with my children's killer. In 1983, when Marcus was 3 years old, I had another baby. Patricia continued, her voice growing stronger as she spoke. His name was Daniel, and he was born prematurely, just like your Jake. He cried constantly, and I was so tired, so overwhelmed. One night when the crying would not stop, I put a pillow over his face until he was quiet. The admission hit me like a physical blow. Patricia had not only murdered my babies and countless others, but she had also killed her own child 4 decades earlier. The guilt nearly destroyed me, she continued. But over time, I convinced myself that I had done the right thing. Daniel was weak, and he would have suffered if he had lived. That belief became my salvation and eventually my mission. I truly believed that I was saving children from lives of pain and disappointment. How many others were there, Patricia? I asked, my voice steady despite the horror of her revelation. Including Daniel and your boy's 23 children over 40 years, she replied with disturbing matter-of-factness. Each one carefully chosen, each one better off in heaven than they would have been on earth. The number was staggering. 23 innocent children had died at the hands of this woman who had presented herself as a loving caregiver. 23 families had suffered the unbearable loss that I knew all too well. When the jury returned their verdict on Friday afternoon, the courtroom was packed with victims' families, media representatives, and members of the public who had followed the case closely. Judge Marcus Thompson, no relation to my husband, presided over the proceedings with the gravity that such a momentous occasion demanded. We, the jury, find the defendant Patricia Thompson guilty of murder in the first degree in the death of Jacob Thompson, the jury foreman announced. We, the jury, find the defendant Patricia Thompson guilty of murder in the first degree in the death of Noah Thompson. The guilty verdicts on both counts were followed by additional convictions for conspiracy to commit murder, evidence tampering, and child endangerment. The jury had deliberated carefully and concluded unanimously that the prosecution had proven Patricia's guilt beyond any reasonable doubt. Judge Thompson scheduled sentencing for the following month. The legal experts predicted that Patricia would receive life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Oregon had abolished the death penalty several years earlier, so life imprisonment was the harshest sentence available for her crimes. During the sentencing hearing, I delivered a victim impact statement that I had been preparing for weeks. Standing before the packed courtroom, I spoke directly to Patricia about the devastation she had caused to our family and to the other victims of her decades-long killing spree. You stole my babies' futures, I said, my voice strong and clear. You robbed them of first steps, first words, birthdays, graduations, and all the precious moments that make life meaningful. But more than that, you stole their lives based on your own twisted delusions about what constitutes adequate motherhood. Judge Thompson sentenced Patricia to life imprisonment without parole plus consecutive terms totaling an additional 60 years for the related charges. The sentence ensured that she would never again have the opportunity to harm another child. 2 years have passed since that devastating day at Anderson Funeral Home, when Emma's innocent truth shattered Patricia's web of lies and exposed the horrific crimes that had destroyed so many families. The journey from that moment of revelation to where we stand today has been marked by profound grief, determined advocacy, and ultimately hope for the future. In the months following Patricia's conviction, I made the decision to channel my grief into protecting other children from similar fates. With the support of Marcus and several other victim families, I established the Jake and Noah Foundation for Infant Safety, a nonprofit organization dedicated to improving background check protocols for child care providers and educating parents about the warning signs of potentially dangerous caregivers. Emma, now 6 years old, has thrived in therapy with Dr. Foster and has become a source of inspiration for other children who have witnessed traumatic events. Her natural courage and honesty have helped several other young victims find the strength to speak up about abuse they have suffered. She takes great pride in knowing that her bravery helped stop the bad grandma from hurting other babies, though we are careful to shield her from the more disturbing details of Patricia's crimes. Marcus and I have grown stronger as a couple through this ordeal, our marriage rebuilt on a foundation of complete honesty and mutual support. The betrayal by his own mother initially devastated him, but therapy has helped him understand that Patricia's actions were the result of severe mental illness and not a reflection of any failure on his part as a son. The Foundation's greatest achievement to date has been the passage of Jake and Noah's Law by the Oregon State Legislature. This comprehensive legislation requires mandatory background checks and psychological evaluations for anyone providing regular child care services to families, including extended family members who spend significant time alone with children. The law also establishes funding for training programs to help parents recognize signs of potential abuse and provides resources for families who suspect their children may be at risk. Our advocacy work has expanded beyond Oregon's borders. I have testified before legislative committees in 12 states, sharing our story and pushing for similar protective measures across the country. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children has partnered with our foundation to develop educational materials for parents and child care providers. Theodore Walsh's cooperation with law enforcement led to additional convictions of the remaining network members. All 5 women received life sentences for their roles in the conspiracy, and Theodore received a 30-year federal sentence for his provision of the deadly compounds. The comprehensive investigation ultimately linked the network to 27 suspicious infant deaths across 6 states over a 4-year period. Patricia herself remains imprisoned at Coffee Creek Correctional Facility, where she has become a subject of study for forensic psychologists seeking to understand the development of serial killing behavior in women. She has never expressed genuine remorse for her crimes, maintaining to this day that she was performing acts of divine mercy. I left my position at Portland General Hospital to focus full-time on foundation work, though I have maintained my nursing license and occasionally volunteer at local clinics. The transition from bedside nursing to advocacy work has been challenging but deeply rewarding. Every law that passes, every parent who becomes more vigilant, and every child who is protected represents a victory for Jake and Noah's memory. The annual memorial service we hold at Lone Fir Cemetery on the twins' birthday has grown into a gathering that honors all children lost to violence and provides support for grieving families. This year, over 200 people attended, including families from across the country who have been touched by our foundation's work. Emma has become an integral part of our advocacy efforts, though we are careful to involve her only in age-appropriate activities. She helps pack educational materials for distribution and enjoys meeting other children who visit our foundation offices. Her presence reminds everyone who meets her that even the youngest voices can speak truth that changes the world. Marcus has expanded his physical therapy practice to include pro bono services for families affected by violent crimes. He specializes in helping trauma survivors regain their physical and emotional strength through therapeutic exercise and movement therapy. His personal experience with betrayal and loss has given him unique insight into the healing process. The support group I facilitate for parents who have lost children to violence meets every Tuesday evening at a community center in Southeast Portland. The group has grown from 3 original families to over 20 regular participants, representing a powerful network of healing and mutual support. These gatherings provide a safe space for parents to share their experiences without judgment and to find practical strategies for navigating the complex emotions of grief and justice. Our foundation's educational programs have reached over 50,000 families through workshops, online resources, and community presentations. We have developed partnerships with pediatrician offices, child care centers, and parenting organizations to ensure that our safety messages reach parents when they are most receptive to learning about protection strategies. The long-term impact of Patricia's crimes extends far beyond our immediate family. The revelation of the Angel of Death Network led to reforms in how sudden infant death cases are investigated, with medical examiners now required to conduct more comprehensive toxicology screenings when multiple children in a family or geographic area die under suspicious circumstances. Emma's courage has been recognized through several awards, including the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children's Young Hero Award. Though we have been careful to protect her privacy, she has allowed her story to be shared as an example of how children's voices must be heard and believed when they report concerning behavior by adults. As I reflect on our journey from devastating loss to meaningful action, I am struck by how Emma's simple question to Pastor Brian became the catalyst for exposing decades of hidden crimes and protecting countless future victims. Her innocent observation that Grandma put something in the baby bottles will forever serve as a reminder that truth has power even when spoken by the smallest voice. The pain of losing Jake and Noah will never completely fade, but their brief lives have created a legacy of protection that extends far beyond what they could have accomplished in a full lifetime. Every child saved by improved safety protocols, every family educated about warning signs, and every law passed in their memory represents a victory of love over evil. Marcus and I have discussed expanding our family in the future, though we approach that possibility with careful consideration and extensive planning. If we are blessed with more children, they will grow up knowing about their angel brothers and understanding that their family is part of something larger than ourselves. The question that drives our continued work is simple but profound. How many children can we save by sharing our story and fighting for stronger protections? Each family that learns to trust their instincts, each caregiver who undergoes proper screening, and each community that becomes more vigilant represents hope that Patricia's reign of terror will never be repeated. Thank you for listening to our story and for caring about the safety of all children. Have you ever had concerns about someone caring for your children that you dismissed because they seemed trustworthy? Your instincts matter, and your voice could be the one that protects an innocent life. Please like this video if our story touched your heart. Subscribe to stay informed about child safety issues. Share this with other parents who need to hear this message, and comment below about your own experiences or questions about protecting children from hidden dangers. Together, we can ensure that no family suffers the loss we endured, and that every child grows up safe in the arms of those who truly love them.